Hi, everyone. So today I'm going to be answering the big question, what can we do about the digital divide? And this is one of the topics we covered in our class, especially in our last unit. And it just really stuck out to me because I thought it was super interesting and super relevant in this day and age. So, to take a quick look at the agenda, we're going to be talking about what the digital divide is, where we see it, why it matters, and what we can do about it, which is ultimately the question I'll be answering. So, to start off, I wanted to define it. And the digital divide is defined as the gap that exists between people in the world who have access to computers, mobile devices, and the internet, and those who do not. And this is a definition that was given from Alice Munua, who talked about this in a video of Mozilla Explains. So, in the end, it kind of just summarizes as, and I put like two X's by it because it means they both don't have the digital divide means that people don't have convenient access to technology and they don't have reliable internet. So up next, we're going to talk about where do we see it. And I'm going to describe three different places where the digital divide is very prevalent and you can see a really wide gap. So the first one is in education, and I'm just going to give a quick summary of this video, but it just kind of highlighted a couple stories of students who struggled to participate in school because of the digital divide. So one of the students was a high school sophomore at Watsonville High and just had a really difficult time receiving internet access and participating in school when it was remote due to COVID. And then it talked about a story of another student who was in a suburb of California and just had a lot better access to the internet. So she had more resources, more money. And so she was able to, like, seamlessly transition to online school. So just kinda talked about, like, those differences were really prevalent during COVID, and they continued, throughout that time, and we still see them. Another area that we see it is in the workplace. So I found this quote, and it said, "The rapid pace at which technology and required technology skills are advancing in the workplace is leaving behind workers without digital skills, access to the internet, and computing devices. It's also having an impact on businesses, efficiency, and competitiveness." So it becomes really clear, especially with COVID, that people had to quickly move to remote working, and sometimes that left a lot of people behind because they weren't up to date on technology and they don't have access to internet or different things like that. So we can see it in the workplace. And then the last place I'm going to highlight is healthcare. So this quote, I'm going to summarize it really quick, just kind of talks about how telehealth has been a really growing area and industry within healthcare. And for a lot of people, that creates a really big challenge because they're not able to access the tools they need to get that help. And so sometimes doctors are only helping people through telehealth. So that can be a really big challenge too. So now we're going to talk about why it matters. And I found a lot of the information on this slide from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. But kind of the biggest thing that I could summarize to why it matters is just because it really perpetuates disparities. And so I'm just going to kind of touch on like the four main areas that it creates disparities in. And there's more than this, but this is just kind of like how I wanted to summarize it and how the my resources defined it. So the first one is just like the lack of access to technology creates an inability to work or go to school. And so that leaves a lot of people behind and it creates a lack of opportunity. Another area is that it creates an inability to keep up with evolving technological advancements. So if your business is moving in a direction that you're not familiar with or you don't know how, it could really leave you behind and you could lose your job essentially. Another area is just an inability to apply for jobs. Based on the resource I mentioned earlier, they talked about how 80% of all job searches happen online. So if that's something that's hard for people to access, they're missing out on that. And so that's a lack of opportunity. And then another area is just a loss of potential innovation in the workplace. So when all these people aren't able to apply or work or participate in conversations online, they're really missing out on all the innovation that they could be contributing. So that creates a lack of opportunity for the person and then also the entire workforce. So the last thing we're going to talk about is what can we do about the digital divide? So I kind of summarized the issue into three solutions. The first one is the Digital Civil Rights Bill, which was talked about in the TED Talk, Why I Fight to Close the Digital Divide. And in this presentation, Mignon Clyburn kind of talked about her experience working for lots of different organizations, but also Lifeline Modernization, which kind of helps people, low income people, lower the cost of internet service, calls for diversity in media ownership, and then it just fights to preserve free and open internet. And she also talks about the digital divide civil rights bill, which encompasses all those different things. So that's just like a very all encompassing solution. And the next two kind of go into that a little bit, but a little more detail. The second one is just to treat the issue as a civil rights issue. And that puts people at the center of the issue. So people aren't just thinking like, okay, digital divide, whatever. It's like, no, this impacts people super, super closely and like impacts their whole life. Um, and then also this will motivate and urge policymakers to treat the issue more seriously. And then I think also like in the wake of COVID-19, people are aware of growing disparities in human rights. So just calling this as like putting this a part of that big lump will help too. And then also increase affordability. So students, patients, and employers should be given the tools they need to succeed. And then also just the idea of calling out federal funding for an increase in technological resources for people. And then ultimately continuing to fight for free and open internet access. So here are my references of places I found, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.